our main goal is to pick the top 3. The next final finale will be actually the top 10 who is going to be presenting. But for us, like at this call, we probably want to pick the top 3 one. How do you guys want to start this? Like, should we, each of us?
Well, before picking, can I just ask the criteria? Because in this morning, we also want to define the criteria. Because, well, from the aspect from as an investor, or from social responsibility, or from technology advancement, well, we have to know, what exactly is the criteria before we can.
Absolutely. I think the competition, like the criteria is actually quite evenly spread by all the quality you just mentioned. Actually, the scoring that we did, I think they all play a role, including the social impact, the technology, also the feasibility in terms of the commercial side. So I think they should all have a score around that. Yeah.
We do have an FH score here already. So any major objection? Or do we need a quick recap as to what they do?
I think I think it's a bit surprising is that B19, the Shanghai Future Mine, I think for that's a pretty good market for the, basically they're talking about, the robotics for training athletes. I think that's a big market in China. So that should be quite promising. I mean, purely from the investor point of view.
You're referring to the
Shanghai
ping pong ball,
and then basically they can adapt the technology to cater for other sports as well. So that's probably a big market for it.
Yeah. The monetization of this kind of technology has always been a challenge. Like, first, it's a bit niche, the category, but secondly, I think how much people are willing to pay for such thing is still undefined, and that part is actually the bottleneck. But like as you mentioned, if they could expand to beyond ping pong, it might have a higher chance. But if it's only focusing on one sport, like even like the very popular sports like may not have a big enough market, and ping pong I think would be also quite tough for them.
For the B16, actually, I'm a bit skeptical because as far as I understand, if they were talking about the price range of about $5,000 for the repeater, and then a few $1,000 for, well, actually $8,000 for the repeaters and $5,000 just for the film. So I think I'm not so sure whether they can make a business case for to against the traditional way, because actually we have an indoor antenna network in Cyberport, and as far as I understand, if we upgrade the indoor antenna network to support 5G, because to upgrade from 4G to 5G, that the simplest way is to take the NSA routes, and that is not very costly, to be honest. So I'm not sure whether they can have a business case for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of also echo that between 16 and 18, they both sort of try to supplement the current 5G technologies.
Yeah.
If I were to choose between two, I would actually think that E6 might have a better potential. And also in terms of current traction, I think E6 probably has better traction than 16 as well. So just
Yes. At least they have some, success case or proven. The traditional way is to lay a indoor antenna network. But then usually for a lot of buildings that need indoor mobile coverage, most of them already have an indoor antenna network, because basically the same problem applies to 4G as well. So for those who need indoor mobile coverage, most buildings will have an indoor antenna network already. And for them, the quickest way, the cheapest way to upgrade to 5G is to, go the NSA routes. So I think the reality is that
without redo the wiring.
Without redoing the wiring.
I also echo that. I really believe that, for the Antwave, when we're talking about with this price, it's very hard to get customer commercial, seriously. Because just think about it, the customer will be those builders, right?
Construction.
The cost, the cost is everything.
And also the indoor antenna, the pricing of indoor antenna is dropping rapidly. But I just met a vendor yesterday that they claim they can have indoor antenna price at around 5,000 Hong Kong dollars.
Okay.
Right.
So it's even cheaper than the repeater.
Yeah. Seems like there's lots of.
Yeah, I also spoke to Antwave. We had a new building and we were actually thinking about using them. The other, unless the technology improved, but otherwise back then, I think it's kind of visible. So if you stick it on a piece of glass, it's actually visible. So that kind of changes the whole
look and feel.
Look and feel of the building. So there's
that's
some
another
concern there as
problem.
well.
That's another
I
problem.
didn't touch on that just now. So it's very important part of it.
And we haven't asked, how long the film can last.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
In case, the installation cost in Hong Kong to install those film on the window is quite expensive though. If we are just talking about the lifespan is less than 1 or 2 years, definitely.
And I guess it's a
not
physical
economical.
film, so probably it's rather easy to copy as well in the long run. So how to make sure that the patent is being protected is not
For this
easy
kind of
question to
technology,
answer.
I think the cost is very important because they are not facing the end consumer.
Yeah.
They are facing the builder. Well, as long as it's cost effective compared to the traditional way, otherwise it's very hard.
Agree. Maybe we should mark this as marginal for now, and then we move on to see the remaining one. And like you said, actually 2 of the criteria is very commercially related: the traction as well as the feasibility.
I think personally, Viact is definitely my pick because I think commercially speaking, they already been proven with a lot of the Hong Kong developers. And I think with today's theme, also maybe Hong Kong Nexus or sustainability, they're entering the market with the safety angle, which is something that's good to begin with. But I think also in Hong Kong, as a property hub, as well as the major hub for a lot of the global developers in Asia, at least, it will be a good kind of potential icon for some technology in this area to service. But definitely, I think if they will get into final, we can maybe down the road give some feedback on their long-term roadmap as in their product portfolio, because I think right now it's more limited towards one-off constructions, but maybe post-construction kind of operations or facility management related areas, they can also kind of further elaborate to increase the attractiveness and all that. Yeah.
I think for me, the retention rate of their customers was a big concern, especially in the early stages. Usually the first adopters are the ones that are most excited about your product and are most easy to retain. But the fact that they're losing 70% is a big concern. And it wasn't clear through the presentation in real world results what they helped to achieve with their technology for their customers. A lot of it was still theoretical in terms of safety, in terms of efficiency, but it wasn't clear in terms of how did they actually improve actual developments. I think maybe it was they didn't mention it clearly, or that was an area that I was a little bit hesitant about.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of like Viact too, but then my reservation is that well, actually, if you're looking at the real life, construction site management, usually the project manager will have to do basically take photographs of the construction site and do it put it in a regular, progress report. If that's the case, then even with the AI camera solutions, they cannot do away with, the PM, doing the regular, photo taking. And if that's the case, then probably it doesn't really save save them a lot of, well, basically no substantial saving in the manual efforts. So that's the reason why I asked them the question, if the solutions can also monitor, have the AI capability to monitor the progress of the project, then it can do away with, the hassles of doing the regular, reporting by the PM, then definitely that would be a great help.
Definitely agree with that. I think the key asset of the company is definitely the algorithm that they have. They mentioned that they have the biggest number of algorithm to predict some of the accidents and all that when compared to competitors, right? So with that, and together with, I think I wrote down 50 plus deployment in Asia with all the big names, I think itself is a accreditation of their capabilities in actually scaling that. So I did vote for Viact as well, which is one of the names that I liked.
Yeah.
So I think Viact is worth, giving a try.
Right. So probably the biggest uncertainty is more on the retention rate.
Yeah.
I think the challenge for them is also like the nature of the industry is like once the site is done, are they going to renew? But that also comes down to who are they talking to? Are they talking to the developer itself as a retainer, or are they talking to a site manager who has a very one-off thing? But that's something that they need to work on. I think also there's some of us who thinks they do have a strong credential and traction. Maybe we should mark this as a no and then this as a marginal, and we can keep maybe the few marginal and we vote for the final two. Neuronspike, that's the one.
I think Neuronspike and 3DK are both ultimately dependent on whether the technology is
Actually works.
actually works or not, which is a little bit hard for us to assess. But I think for Neuronspike, the concern is that I think for AI chips, a lot of the development goes hand in hand with the use case and
software.
the testing, right? And to develop an AI chip without the use case in combination, or to be a platform for all use cases is very difficult, which is why I think they might suffer a little bit in that aspect, and which is why I asked about the use cases. But ultimately, it comes down to the technology and the performance of the chip itself.
Yeah. Definitely is quite an early stage company, and also I'm not sure if IP licensing is one of the best way to go for to be a go-to-market, particularly as a startup. We're looking into quite a lot of design, fabless, but I think they did have to manage all the supply chain, unless the technology is so unique. Otherwise, I think given the credential of the team and the connection, maybe it's gonna be quite tough for them to go to the market as a IP licensing focus.
Yeah, I will agree. The competition it's a bit intense. Maybe 2 years ago it will be rather okay, but right now a lot of the big tech companies, those who invent their software architecture for AI, all have their own processor, like Google Tensor, and also say GraphCore also invented some AI-specific chips. So I think the timeline and roadmap to compete with these are rather...
Say resources competitions.
Yeah.
The more resources you have, you can go faster.
The more you can.
Yeah.
I think both for 3DK as well, the time for them to really put up the machine, go for a certification, really put it on the plane, it's maybe 6 years, 8 years, something like that.
True. What's tough, I think even if we give them more time, it's very hard for him to elaborate what's the traction or milestone. 3DK, my concern for this company is more on the ceiling of this 3D printing itself. Of course, now there's relatively more use case in the aero industry, or let's say the spaceship related industry, but still you're competing in a quite niche competition against not just metal 3D printing, but also other materials 3D printing. So my concern for the company to really scale up would be more in terms of the ceiling of this market.
I guess for them, they would like to focus on aviation itself. Is something that is not easy to crack. I think when they actually want to print on-demand components and things like that, every single, even very small part will be subject to airworthiness regulations and all that. It's probably not easy to actually to get the green light or to have the airworthiness accreditation from all the or aviation authorities around the world. So I guess even though they are working with HECO, but then that road to green potentially would be a really long time for them to actually have the actual use case.
Agree. Like as you mentioned in the pitch, and also like when we look at the tools that they produce from the prototype machine is now actually working on those repairment instrument.
Exactly.
Not something on the aircraft yet. I think, like you said, like there's a huge barrier to really cross the main, the bigger components that have.
But that's true for anybody who wants to do this, right? Anyone who wants to do this would have to do that anyway.
Exactly.
So they're not disadvantaged per se, right?
We also looked into the space, and I think right now they're still targeting mostly for those small-scale design studio, because most of the time for nowadays metal work, a lot of them are due in CNC machines.
Yeah.
Very high precision, very low cost, and all that.
Right.
So even the spec company is also having some trouble when it comes to expanding the metal printing market. So they pivoted into also carbon fiber printing and all that.
Right.
So
I was doing a quick desktop research, like the market. Of course, there's lots of way to estimate it, like, but globally it's around 13B is going to 30 billion in a few years.
maybe in aerospace.
It's hard to say it's a large market, like and
Exactly.
and it could be not very fragmented at the end. And probably 1-2 players will dominant. So I think in terms of the industry that they're focusing on, that would be the limiting factor. Maybe for these 5 B20, like probably even they get to top 10, it's hard for them to really elaborate more. 3DK, I would say similar case as well. Yeah. Esix, like we briefly talk about this. Like, do we want to add more? Like, it could be the potential for them. I feel like they haven't find more mass adopt use case for now. They have the use case they do is autonomous related vehicle within the port. I think that's part of the problem they need to overcome is find other more commonly used use case. In terms of the team is quite experienced, like when we talk to them. Yeah.
I think the issue is how scalable they are across different use cases, right? Because they want to be the platform to connect old technology to 5G, but I don't know if right now they've just manually, integrated or I guess upgraded the connectivity, or whether it's really a platform that can plug and play for a lot of different kinds of use cases and technology, which is my biggest concern. How scalable it is.
I think the value proposition of bridging between the 5G and also the traditional technology stack of like IoT devices or and the vehicles and stuff, I think there's a real need there.
Yeah.
And they're proving that in Tianjin Port and some other projects. But I don't think they're quite there yet in terms of becoming a platform. I think right now they still need to do it project by project.
Very customized.
Yeah, but I guess that's the next stage that they need to go to.
Yeah.
But I think the market should be there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think I agree with what you said earlier. I find them a bit more exciting than Viact out of the 5G place. Yeah.
Yep. Seems most of us feel this one could be one of the options in the top 3 compared to Viact. Maybe we discuss the last one, this one, then we can like choose among these 3, like Viact, Esix, and D-Engraver. I agree. Like every one of us asked a question around how do they compete with DocuSign, Adobe Sign. Definitely, it's already a very established player listed, and for this kind of thing, there's a network effect behind. Like if the other counterparty is more familiar with DocuSign, maybe they will request for that. So I think that's definitely the biggest hurdle. Like, but at the same time, I do see like being on blockchain does have a very strong value add. Like I would say, of course, now the whole market is very booming, like crypto, whatever. But in general, I feel like the blockchain technology, one of the biggest merit is really to build a trusted proof across multiple parties. I didn't get a chance to ask them like how are they being compatible with other player, but in terms of technology, I do feel like eventually, even like maybe DocuSign or Adobe Sign, they need to consider adopting.
But I think the danger is that if a blockchain for document signing really takes off, then probably DocuSign will be the first one to change the backend engine to support blockchain. So that's the the difficulty of an uphill battle against the incumbent player.
I think honestly, when actually, say for example, I think bank definitely is one of the key stakeholders when considering all these usage and use cases. I think one of the very important success factor for these platforms is that they will have the power to actually engage a various trusted party to go onto the platform. But then from the presentation, I cannot see why those partners would actually come onto the platform and actually create the network effects that you have mentioned and have more people using the platform. And another point is that they are so niche. They are only tackling one specific pain points that these parties are having. But honestly, banks, shipper, and lawyers, they have a lot of different pain points in terms of actually working with other parties. So I guess totally agree with you. We are using Adobe Sign, even from bank perspective. Yeah. So I don't see why we need to go onto this particular platform to facilitate that. So honestly, I didn't really like the idea of B14. Yeah.
One thing I don't know about is whether there is similar players in mainland, because I guess given data, this issue around data sovereignty, there should be a place for a more mainland-focused DocuSign, but I don't know whether they're trying to do that to become the mainland Adobe Sign or DocuSign.
The trust gap has to be very strong to adopt a completely new technology. And I think it's been proven that DocuSign, Adobe Sign, it's not like people don't trust the platform, right? People still use it. I don't think there's that big of a trust gap for them to say, I really want to try this new blockchain thing. Whereas in China, a lot of the success we've had is with government parties or like 3 or 4 parties into one agreement or one contract, like that kind of thing. And not just about signatures, but also about, fulfilling obligations and stuff like that. So I do feel like the trust gap in the use case they've picked isn't compelling enough to really drive adoption for them.
Agreed. So these two, should we pass or do we still want to focus on it? Then maybe we can, let me recap. Like this one, I think we already passed. It's more like Viact, Esix. This one also no. So we actually already have the top 3, I guess. D15 and also
I will say though, I found both Neuronspike and 3DK more exciting than a lot of the other choices. I was thinking about that. I would pick one of them over Viact, to be honest.
I agree.
Give them a chance.
I agree.
Yeah, because I think we're vouching for deep tech track. Just to get a bit of hope for moonshot opportunities. I was thinking about that as you speak as well.
I mean, for market size of metal 3D printing, it's also one of those things where unless the technology gets there, it's probably hard to figure out what it can do. And as the costs come down and the investment goes in, I think it could open a lot of doors.
Right.
And Neuronspike, I mean, I just don't know, right? Like
maybe
they'll get acquired for $1 billion by Huawei or something. Who knows? Yeah. But it's hard to say. But I would say that I would pick one of the two. Yeah.
The
maybe we should
gentleman actually
vote.
worked on this technology for 9 years. Like he's since from the PhD, spending all his time doing this.
And I would say he was the best presenter out of all of them. He timed it perfectly so that it was 5 minutes. I don't know if you guys realized when he was done talking, it was on the dot and he was ready for questions.
Right.
He's clearly, put a lot of work into it, I think. I mean, when asked why his technology is good, I mean, he had a pretty technical but clear answer about why traditional ones trap gases and don't work, not durable, and his version is a little bit better. I mean, at least I could feel like I understood it.
Do we all agree?
Democracy.
Any
Yes.
more second thought? Right.
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.